Were you aware that Exar Kun and his Sith Empire and the Jedi Order of that specific era were actually at fault for the devastation of Mustafar? I was very surprised that I missed this and hadn't heard about it. Recently I've been making a lot of shorts for other platforms, and one topic I really wanted to cover was the devastation of Mustafar in Star Wars canon. I really enjoyed Vader Immortal, the VR game, and I actually liked the whole concept of Mustafar being ravaged by gravitational anomalies. And I hadn't played the game for a while, and as I was doing some research into the story to make sure I got my lore right, it never actually occurred to me what happened to Mustafar in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Truthfully, I always thought that it was just a volcanic planet and that's how it was. It never evolved into being anything else. But when I actually looked into Mustafar in Legends, lo and behold, I was shocked to realise that it was actually in the Old Republic era where Mustafar was ravaged, and it all came down to everybody's favourite Sith Lord, Exar Kun. So the first time that we see Mustafar is in Revenge of the Sith, and it is truly one of the most iconic planets of the prequels, both visually and thematically in what it represents to the story. Every instance of Mustafar is supposed to represent the destruction of the Republic, the burning desire of Anakin's soul, that fateful battle between good and evil in the depths of hell and whatnot. It serves a very important purpose. But to truly understand why Mustafar is the way it is, we have to travel 4,000 years back, and Exar Kun had just fallen to the dark side. He was branded by Marka Ragnos as the true heir to the Sith, and he begun his rampage across the galaxy. Exar's war was brutal, it was short, but it was devastating to both the Jedi Order and the Republic. And at this point in time, Mustafar was just a nice planet. We know that most of Mustafar was covered in jungles and forests, and with that it had to be covered in oceans, and it was a very stable, life-bearing planet. And around 400 years before Exar Kun's war, the Jedi Order had actually settled onto Mustafar and built a Jedi enclave similar to the one that was on Dantooine. Now, just before Exar began his conquest, there was a Jedi Master on Mustafar who was considered to be one of the most powerful individuals of the Jedi Order. His knowledge and mastery of the physical force was considered to be unmatched by anybody, and he was called Chugondar. And in his time on Mustafar studying the physical force, he completed the creation of one of the most unique force-based items we've ever seen, the Chugondar Cube. Using the force and using the cube, one was literally able to transmogrify an object placed within it. This meant that the object placed within the cube was transformed into something completely different. It essentially reorganized the matter and the atoms of an object and turned it into something else. Obviously, Exar Kun was hellbent on doing as much damage as he could, and the knowledge of the Jedi Enclave as well as the cube was knowledge that Exar Kun probably possessed, considering that he was always trying to learn more about the forbidden side of the Jedi Order and the Force, which is why he kind of fell to the dark side in the first place. So, as a result, Exar Kun's Sith Empire invaded Mustafar, and the Jedi Order defended the planet in response. Now, for a little bit more context, Mustafar itself was located within the middle of two major gas giants within that star system, Lefrani and Jestefad. You can actually see these two gas giants in Revenge of the Sith. That big planet that's behind Mustafar in the opening shot as Anakin flies in, and then you can also see Lefrani during one of the shots on the planet later. But fortunately for Mustafar, it was distanced well enough between them where it could create its own gravitational orbit and not be pushed into one of the gas giants. But during the battle between the Sith and the Jedi on Mustafar, something occurred that shouldn't have. We don't know how this happened, whether it was some crazy ridiculous feat used by a Force user that's never been named, or whether the sheer amount of Force energy on Mustafar had some effect, or perhaps it was even a super weapon. But one of these gas giants was pulled out of its orbit by the Force towards Mustafar. But this gravitational destabilization would have actually pushed Mustafar into Jestefad's gravitational orbit, turning Mustafar into a moon and not a planet. But the other gas giant situated on the other side had something to say about it, and so the two gas giants were essentially pulling Mustafar apart, with one gas giant trying to pull it one way and the other gas giant trying to pull it the other, and they were essentially playing a tug of war with Mustafar as their rope, trying to drag it into being its moon. Where Mustafar was once an oceanic jungle planet, this constant rupture and pulling just utterly devastated the surface. It created environmental hazards that made Mustafar pretty much inhospitable. Poisonous gases began to spew from the surface, the oceans dried up, and the forests were burned to the ground. And not to mention, this tug of war was causing volcanic eruptions, and we know at one point one of these eruptions was cataclysmic in scale, furthering Mustafar's descent into hell. Obviously, this didn't result in very much for Exar Kun, as his Sith Empire collapsed very shortly afterwards, and what happened to the Jedi Master Chugondar is unknown, but the box actually survived thousands of years into the future, where it appeared in Star Wars Galaxies, and this is where the story comes from, and you can actually visit the ruins of the Mustafarian Jedi Enclave during the game, which is pretty cool. And they actually tried to replicate this in some way in Star Wars canon, but they did it a little bit differently. Where a woman called Korvax built a special machine on Mustafar called the Aeon Engine, which had the ability to bring back people from the dead. She tried to bring back her dead husband, and the power she used with it was some Mustafarian artifact called the Bright Star. But the activation of the machine went terribly wrong, and it created some giant energy burst that pushed Mustafar out of its orbit, and then the same thing occurred where both gas giants were pulling it apart and trying to drag it into their orbit to make it a moon. But it's interesting because there is a Star Wars Legends story in Star Wars canon, where the Jedi and the Sith were responsible for pulling one of the gas giants out of its orbit, which created that tug of war between the two of them. And while I think both of these stories could exist historically within Star Wars canon, I think it's a little bit weird that they just tried to put that legend story in to appeal to people while also saying this is actually how it happened. But, you know, I'm not too fussed. I actually enjoyed the whole idea of Korvax and the Aeon Engine obliterating Mustafar's surface. I thought that was pretty cool. So, for me, I'm happy with either. And I kind of liked the idea of the Aeon Engine being destroyed in Vader Immortal, and this kind of allowed Mustafar to heal itself. Whether that put Mustafar back into its normal gravitational alignment or whatnot, as you can see in The Rise of Skywalker and some of the comic books, the trees are starting to regrow on Mustafar and water's starting to come back, so I thought that was an interesting concept, and it is one of the few good things to have come out of The Rise of Skywalker and some of the stories surrounding it, and I'm so sad they deleted so much of the Mustafar footage from the beginning. I don't get why, because it was pretty goddamn awesome. I think the opening to The Rise of Skywalker is one of the only good bits about the film. Don't forget to hit the like button to support the channel, and subscribe to join the best Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube. Come and follow me on Twitter and join the Discord server, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.